going on, everybody? We are back. Episode number 212 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're talking UFC Vegas 104, headlined by Roman Dolidze and Marvin Vettori in their rematch. A rematch no one really asked for, but we've got it. So, yeah, we're going to cover that card tonight. Obviously, last night was an interesting card that we will cover as well. As always, guys, if you like the show, drop a like, subscribe. It helps us out, and we'd appreciate it. And we're brought to you guys by FightNumbers.com. For 30% off your first month subscription there, you can use the promo code CLUB, C-L-U-B. Fight Numbers, great site, run by John Kelly. Really sharp group over there. They have the live odds screen. They got his trends tool. They got bets from Pepe and Ozzy, and they got all of John's DFS projections. So, again, for 30% off your first month there, use the promo code CLUB. And, yeah, let's talk about last night real quick. We had UFC 313. I didn't really love the card, but I did okay on it. I finished up 2.83 units. It was a up and down card for me all the way around. I ended up cashing out of my Fiziev bet yesterday morning. Although I still think he had a lot of scope to win that fight, but he looked pretty horrible.
And I thought he got injured also mid-fight. It kind of seemed like something just went wrong with, I believe it was his left.
Yeah, it was really strange. I mean, he looked very slow, surprisingly so to me. But yeah, so I had first fight, I had the Diaz Santos over 2.5 for a unit and a half at plus 120. I mean, that was an absolute brawl. So
good bet though. It didn't look like a lot of again, there was a lot of finishing power there.
No one really got hurt, but they did go to war. I had Ray Saruya sub 1, 0.2 units, and sub 2, 0.1 units. Those were horrible. Josh Van was probably the best bet of the night, to be honest. He closed like minus 127, and he looked, I mean, his true price was probably like minus 1,000. It didn't look like Saruya had any chance to compete with him on the feet there. I had a unit on Francis Marshall at plus 280. That was maximum pain. That one. That was not fun. That really.
Yeah. I don't have.
Yeah. It was extremely rough for me. So that was fun. I had 2 units on Bruno Ferreira at plus 135. That obviously hit. It kind of went how I expected it would. Armin, I shouldn't say I expected him to hit a triangle arm bar, but Armin was winning minutes. But Bruno obviously had a lot more moment potential and a lot more finishing potential, and he had some grappling potential. So, yeah, I was happy to cash that. Had a unit on Bobby Green at plus 363. That was horrendous. I was actually commentating for Narco's Discord on that fight, and like 10 seconds in, I was like, oh my God, he's going to get finished. He looks horrible. He just looked slow, old, deteriorated. He looked like he didn't train, to be honest. Sad, but I think that's probably the end for Bobby. The end of an era there. He just seems like he's finished. I had 2.5 units on Jalen Turner, plus 101. I thought the line movement was weird all week, and then we found out shortly after the fight what that line movement was from. As it turns out, Jalen Turner retired right after. Pretty emotional interview about not really having his head in the game anymore. So that sucked. And then I had Magomed Ankalaev. I had 4 units on his money line, like an average of plus 103, and I had 1 unit on his ITD at plus 225. Obviously, the ITD didn't hit. Weird fight. I have like very mixed feelings on it. Like I think there was definitely value on Ank at the line, but it obviously didn't, he didn't have as easy a time taking Alex down or had any time at all as I thought he would. But having said that, I do think Alex's kind of refusal to throw hands were likely had to do with him worrying about the takedown threat. And I also I still think Magomed fought a pretty bad game plan because I kind of think he could have just did what he did in round 4 for the entire fight, just clinch him up and like beat him up there. And instead he just kind of measured Cox with him, which he won. But yeah, happy to cash that. Decent night for me. How did you do?
Not too great night for me. Down 2.8 units for me actually. But started off the night great, as you alluded to with the Josh Van. So I had Josh Van and starts round 2 at minus 120 on FanDuel there for a unit and a half. So that was nice. But then I had Fiziev money line, like we alluded to win a unit and a half. Didn't look great there. And then Turner money line. I had that 2.12 units to win 2 units across. I had minus 112 and plus 110 as well. But I was going to come on the pod, John, and say, you know what? After getting guard sub like that, never Jalen Turner again. But he quit on himself again and kind of made it easy for us. So
I just don't think his head was in it because I don't think he quit with the tap. I mean, it was locked in pretty tight, but the setup was really slow. Like he really should not have gotten put in it.
His fight IQ is just one to be studied. Let's just put it that way.
Dude, when Bottom Mondays ended up on bottom, I was like, oh, this is going to be an easy 30-27. Like, he's not going to do anything from here.
I was like, I was literally, I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is an easy round. Like, he's probably not going to get up.
That, yeah, it was very tilting. Also, I believe you owe me 2 shots.
I do, and I have them here waiting because we talked about the Armin Petrosian fight. Obviously, I didn't have a bet there. You
3 actually then. Lemos did. There was no comparison of Lemos to Lucindo from Joe Rogan. He did call Lucindo a boy, but
jeez.
If you want to take 2 and then roll 1 into next week, we can do that. We could do that.
But yeah, no. So the 2 I owe you from Armin Petrosian, like we talked about, and then obviously in the main event, I wasn't going to bet Alex unless he went dog. Obviously, that never ended up happening.
Yeah.
So, cheers to you, John. But you can kick off first fight of the night for this card and kicking off talking about this card in general. I think I'm probably going to need some of these shots to get through it. It's going to be chalk heavy card for sure.
It's horrible. Yeah. I really don't like this card at all. I don't even know. I have 2 bets on it right now. I may add a couple others, but TBD. But first fight of the night, we got Yanezi Dubin. She's taking on Carly Giudice. Giudice currently big chalk here, minus 405. The comeback on Dubin plus 335. I think you're gonna have a different take than me, but I think Giudice. I think the price is fine, honestly. Dubin was plus 1,000 on Contender Series, and obviously she won with like an all-time meme shot, and the chick she was fighting was pretty terrible. Yeah. And I think Dubin's got decent power in her hands for a female, but she's got no defense. She's got no grappling. She's got really no technique. And Giudice, she's very raw herself and doesn't have much defense. I will say that. So I suppose maybe there's some upside for, Dubin having some moments. I guess why I can't quite get there with that is, Carrasqueta and especially Gabriela Fernandez are both, both pretty big hitters. And Carly took their shots and just walked through them and just came forward, put an absolute hellacious pace on both, has elite cardio. And I just kind of think that's what's going to happen here. Maybe Dubin clips her with something again, but I'm pretty doubtful after watching the Fernandez fight. And I just think Carly's a much better boxer. She's got better cardio. I think she's probably a much better grappler. I think she's going to be able to do a lot of work in the clinch. Yeah, I think Giudice is actually a decent prospect, even though she's 3-2, just based on, the cardio durability. And Dubin, I don't expect to be in the UFC for more than like 3 fights. So I think Giudice should win. What do you think?
I mean, I have a different take in terms of like where the value is at, I should say, but I don't have a total different take where Carly is as a fighter. Like, I think, again, she's going to be a good prospect in some time, but like seeing her as minus 500 favorite, whereas she doesn't have a ton of finishing upside. Her grappling, she has a minimal grappling upside in most fights. In this fight, I think she probably does too as well. But she's just, she's kind of a walking punching bag on the feet. And I think Dubin, she's game. She's going to go forward, throw some strikes. There's not a ton of tape on her. She is pretty low level, to your point. Not advocating that she's some kind of great fighter, but it's plus 400 out there. So I think could be worth the shot. I'm probably not going to get to the window myself because she's quite trash herself. It's a pretty low level fight.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Moving on, we have another very, very low level fight. We have Josiane Nunes taking on Priscilla Cachoeira. Josiane Nunes currently minus 190. The comeback on Cachoeira plus 165. What are your thoughts here, Lex? I think there's some value on the dog.
There is, and real quick. Shout out to the dog real quick. All right. Yeah, Priscilla Cachoeira plus 170, though. What are we doing here? This to me seems like a coin flip. I get it. Cachoeira's, her defense isn't that great, but neither is Josiane Nunes. To me, I don't get how you price Nunes at a 2-to-1 clip. So easy click for me on Cachoeira plus 170.
Yeah, I took 1.5 units on Cachoeira plus 170 as well. I'm fine with favoring Josiane here just because I do think she picks her shots a bit more intelligently than Cachoeira does. And, you said Cachoeira's defense isn't that great. I feel like that's being very generous. Her defense is it's non-existent.
It's around, I think it's 42%, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's awful. She's very, very easy to hit. But I think Josiane Nunes is one of the worst fighters in the organization as well. She hits hard. It's actually, similar to Cachoeira in a lot of ways. They both hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
Cachoeira is a lot bigger than she is. I look at this fight and, Josiane, she's had a couple KOs in the UFC, a couple wins, but like Zara Farron, horrible, not in the UFC
She's
anymore.
had a soft run. Her
Very
entire
soft.
run. Her
Ramona
entire UFC
Pasquale, Bea Malecki, none of them are in the UFC anymore.
Yeah.
And she lost to Chelsea Chandler. So
Cavalcanti.
And Cavalcanti's decent, but like that, and that was
she's all right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I and Cachoeira on the other side, she's most of the good women she's fought, and she's gotten absolutely brutalized by. But she's got some okay wins. She beat Ji Young Kim by decision, no less, even though I thought that Kim should have gotten that decision pretty clearly. But she did win that fight on power shots, basically. She did beat Ariane Lipski
last time I bet her.
KO.
Yeah. Plus
Same.
165 and the under. The under there was plus 150. The under 2.5 here is like plus 125.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like that fight is a lot what this one's going to be like. The difference there was that Lipski, I think there was a lot more equity for Lipski planting and just countering her face off. Whereas, these two women, they're going to probably bite mouthpieces and swing until someone drops or someone gets hurt. Obviously, Nunes could win that fight. And as I said, I do think she picks her shots a bit better than Catch does. She's a bit younger than Catch is. But at the end of the day, it's two very low-level women who both have their only plus attribute being power, and they're going to bite down and swing. So, with that dynamic, I'll take the woman who's fought better competition, has better wins, and probably has a bit more power. So I've Cachoeira small, like nothing crazy, but I do think there's some value on the current line. Moving on, we got Andre Lima taking on Daniel Barez. Current price, Lima, decent-sized favorite here. He is, where is that price? He is minus 275. The comeback on Barez, plus 235. I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on this because there's a part of me that wants to play Barez. Like that's the.
And I can see why. Because just start off, I can see why just because Lima in general, pretty low volume, not super active on the feet. I guess my only counter to that would be I actually think he's a solid prospect. Like on the feet, he is a solid striker, even though I think he does pick his shots pretty well. And in terms of the offensive wrestling, I think he showed, solid performance with that in his last fight against Felipe dos Santos. So I think he's a solid prospect. Go ahead. You can just go ahead.
No, you go. Keep going.
I guess the only thing, Barez to me, he's a good fighter, well-rounded overall. To me, something, I don't know what it is. Just there's something weird to me about him. Like, I don't think, his cardio's okay. Work rate could be a little bit better. I don't know. There's something just weird to me, John. I don't know. I can't really quite put my finger on it, I guess.
Yeah, he's a bit wilty, to be honest.
A bit on the older side, too.
Yeah, very old for flyweight, 36 years old. I don't know. It's very weird because, I agree. Lima's obviously got the brighter future of the two. Lima's obviously quite young, fairly well-rounded. Barez, though, he's got rare power for 125, which is obviously it's a tremendous asset to have in your back pocket. The guy's got a bunch of KOs in his career. He's hurt people in every fight he's been in, from Contender Series through the UFC so far. And that's the kind of thing that can insert a lot of variance into the fight. And, Lima's very good technically, but he can let guys get ahead on him on minutes. We've seen it. We saw it happen with Felipe dos Santos in his last fight. He dropped the first round. He went to a split decision with Mitch Raposo. You've just seen Lima. Even the first fight where he got bit, that fight, he was starting to get out hustled a bit before that happened. So I'm still pretty Lima skeptical. I do think he's got good tools and is a good talent, but he hasn't really put them together yet, in my opinion. And I think Barez, while they're standing, has some potential for coming out here, out-busying him, landing bigger shots, maybe hurting him at some point. But a couple things to me, the first one being, to your point, I don't think it'll be easy for Lima to take him down. Like, Barez is a much better defensive wrestler than Felipe dos Santos is. Yeah, he's not. I don't think he's that easy to take down. But once he is down, I really don't like his game on bottom. Like, I'd expect him to get held there, if Lima gets takedowns, which obviously adds a lot of upside to the Lima side here. The other thing is, to your point, I just get wilty vibes from Barez. Like, he kind of seemed like I bet him last fight against Victor, and he seemed like he was crumbling before he dropped him in round 2 in that fight.
Well, go ahead.
It's kind of what happened to him in his Contender Series fight with Carlos Hernandez too. He started to get tired, and he didn't go full quit, but you could see him kind of just get like discouraged, like pretty hard. And obviously he just kind of, as soon as he got taken down by Chafel Filo, he just gave up a choke pretty much immediately. So I do worry that, if he's not being the hammer, things can go south on him in a hurry. And I feel Andre Lima is a pretty composed fighter, especially for someone as young as he is. He doesn't seem to panic. He just, he's very, very methodical. And yeah, I mean, I think Lima's probably making improvements. There's a decent chance that Barez is regressing at his age. I think Lima's a bit tougher mentally than him. And I think he's got the grappling upside. So I don't know if I'll get there on Barez, but I do think it's an interesting, I could see him competing here.
What I was going to say, didn't even think about this until now because they're on the same card now. But do you think Daniel Barez is a little bit of the flyweight Alex Hernandez?
That actually is an interesting point of comparison. He does it is kind of similar. I like his skill set. He's a pretty skilled fighter, but
same with Alex Hernandez, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
we're going to get to on this card in a bit.
Yeah.
Nice little teaser there.
Yes.
Moving on though, fourth fight of the night, we got Josias Musasa making his debut off Contender Series, taking on Carlos Vera. Musasa, big time chalk here, minus 650. The comeback on Vera plus 475. What do you think, your legs?
I think this is more an indictment of Carlos Vera as a fighter than Musasa. I mean, going through Musasa's tape, I mean, again, there's not much, but the guy's pretty athletic, has some power on the feet. Yeah. Outside of that, I mean, pretty defensively void, can be taken down. Cardio, again, seems okay. First time entering a third round his last fight. Again, seemed all right there. I think he probably finishes Vera at a pretty decent clip, but again, it's like we're talking about 650, 7-1 here. Like, it should be a layup for him, but I had no interest.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I think Musasa's a pretty good talent, to be honest. He's not that skilled yet at all, in my opinion. But he is very athletic. He's very fast. He's got power in his hands. I think his hips are pretty strong. And yeah, I think he's going to take some lumps early on in his time in the UFC. But if he sticks to it, I think he could get a lot better and end up being like a really good fighter. Here with Carlos Vera, we're in like banana peel territory because I think Carlos Vera is not it. I really don't think this guy is any good at all. He's kind of just like a weakling. He's not very strong. He's not a great wrestler. He does have some tricky jiu-jitsu. And I will say, when you have a guy like Josias Musasa, who's as raw and as green as he is, him getting caught in like one of, Vera's stupid heel hooks or like a guillotine, I could see happening. It wouldn't really shock me. We talked about this last week with Ray Saruya, and it didn't really manifest. But similar to Saruya, Carlos Vera is a very unorthodox grappler, and for a guy that's as raw as Musasa is, I feel that it could be live that he gets caught in something. But having said that, I don't think there's much value on Vera personally. I just feel like I think he's going to have a hell of a time taking Musasa down. I think the speed and the power on the feet is going to be just way, way, way too much for him. Dixon said he's a mini Dalcha. I don't know. I feel like the only dude. I think that the only similarity between them is they're black and jacked. Like Dalcha was an absolute.
And both from Africa.
Yeah, but Dalcha had like a lot of fights. This kid's only got 8 fights. He's very, very young. I feel like he's got a lot more potential than like Dalcha had. But who knows? He might never realize it. We don't really know. But I do just think the physical difference here is going to be way, way, way too big for Vera. But yeah, I mean, if you wanted to take a poke at it, I mean, what's the under?
It's 1.5 rounds plus 150.
I actually kind of think the under is not a terrible look, honestly, even though it is 1.5. I feel like most of Vera's upside is pretty front loaded in the fight, right? I mean,
yeah.
So we'll see. I'm passing though. I think Musasa should handle it.
Personally, I just hate the 1.5. Like, I get it. That is probably most of his win condition. I'd rather just play the slight juice on it at 2.5 if that was the angle you were playing. But
yeah, agreed. Moving on, we got DR Nurgazai. He's making his debut off the Contender Series, and he's taking on Brenson Ribeiro. Current price, Nurgazai, pretty big favorite. He's minus 310. The comeback on Ribeiro, plus 260. I think it's an interesting fight. I don't really... It's weird because Nurgazai does some things pretty well, but I also don't think he's that complete of a fighter. He's got a good left overhand, good left kick good left rear kick. He's an okay counter grappler, but I don't think he has much outside of those skills. He's got cardio that can be kind of suspect at times. He doesn't really use his right hand at all, when he's striking, or his right foot. It's all just left hand, left side oriented. And, he's coming in off a head kick finish on Contender Series, but I didn't think he was that, overwhelmingly effective in that fight. It was more that guy Strelchek he was fighting just didn't return fire on anything. And his only other decent win is he beat Emiliano Sordi, but that literally looked like a fixed fight. Sordi just got taken down or went for a takedown and then just shelled up and quit.
Well, he got hurt. I was going to say he got hurt pretty bad when he went in for that takedown, it seemed like. But yeah.
Who knows? It was very strange.
Well, on top of that, too, Sordi looked like, that's a washed version of Sordi.
Yeah, he looked fat and out of shape. And it was not great.
No.
But yeah, Nurgazai, he's fast while he's fresh. He's got good pop. And, he can counter grapple fairly well. I just question what his ceiling is. And Ribeiro on the other side, I don't think Ribeiro is that good of a fighter, but I do think he's got some decent tools. He's very long, first of all. He's 6'3", he's got an 81-inch reach. He's long, he's got a lot of power, he's pretty fast, and he's a somewhat dangerous submission grappler. Now, I do think here the biggest difference between these two fighters is hardware. Nurgazai seems like he can take a shot pretty well, and Ribeiro seems pretty glass to me. So that is a pretty big concern. I also think Nurgazai being a southpaw probably benefits him a bit since he doesn't really have to worry about Ribeiro's calf kicks at all. And you kind of saw Ribeiro fought Kyle Machado, a southpaw, in his last fight, and he seemed kind of out of sorts in terms of finding the target. He did win the fight off hard shots, and I could see him doing that again here, but I don't know. It was like I was kind of sketched out that he had such a hard time with Kyle Machado in that fight. Kyle Machado is pretty bad and obviously a former heavyweight. So, yeah, there's a part of me that wants to bet Ribeiro. He's the much more experienced fighter. He's obviously got a lot more UFC experience. He is a dangerous fighter. But I do think, Nurgazai, I feel, is going to be able to mostly neutralize his grappling in all likelihood. And I think he's got a lot more KO equity. And I think Ribeiro's got more just melting off adversity equity here. So I don't know. I'm curious what your opinion is here. I'm probably going to pass it. I do tend to lean Ribeiro being the side and maybe take a look at the over because Nurgazai does tend to be pretty low volume. What do you think?
I know we chatted about this one a little bit before we started. I more or less think the line's probably fine. On the feet, he could land a head kick like that on Ribeiro here. He's super defensively void. Like you even mentioned, pretty brittle on the feet. I don't think his durability is that good. And in terms of the grappling, I think he could offensively grapple here, not just counter grapple to your point. I think he could land takedowns here on Ribeiro. I guess my only point of contention in the under would be that Dayard, most of his finishes are early too.
Yeah.
And I think they're probably going to get after it. It is a 1.5 and, plus 110 to the under 1.5. Wouldn't have any interest there. But I think the fight probably does finish. And I think Dayard does find a finish.
Fair enough. I'll stick with you here. Moving on. We got Stephanie Luciano making her second fight in the UFC. She's taking on Samantha Hughes. Current price, Luciano minus 255. The comeback on Sam Page plus 215. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, another one that's just tough to bet Sam if she doesn't have, an obvious cardio or obvious, dog in her type of edge here. And I really just don't think she does against Luciano. She's huge for the division, big frame, and solid striker herself. I don't see many scenarios where Sam is just making it super, super competitive.
Yeah, I love Sam Page. She's my girl, obviously.
Yeah.
I bet her a bunch. But the problem with Sam Hughes in general is she either has to have a big grappling edge or a big cardio edge to really, win fights at this level. She's not a bad boxer. She's a pretty technically skilled boxer, actually, and she's a decent grappler. The problem is she's got zero, assertiveness. She'll go forward, but she doesn't really have much sting on her shots. She's not dangerous at all in any real realm. She'll keep a high work rate, but she's slow. She's plodding. She's very easy to outmaneuver. And you see in just about every fight when she fights someone faster than her, she's kind of at their mercy until they slow down, unless she can get on top of them. And Luciano, I still don't really know what to make of Stephanie Luciano as a prospect, but she does seem like a very good athlete to me. I don't think she's at much risk of getting grappled for 15 minutes here by Sam. I feel she should have a huge speed and power advantage, especially in the early going. And, with that dynamic, I just see, I shouldn't say I see, I would be shocked if Sam doesn't struggle early in this fight. On top of which, Luciano's cardio looks pretty good to me. So I kind of think she's probably going to be able to hold it together long enough to bank 2 rounds or even 3 against Hughes. But, if anything, just bet Sam Page live, right? That seems to be the much more better way to play it if you see Luciano starting to crack. But I think she's going to take care of business here. I feel like the athleticism and speed difference is just too much. And I don't think Sam has, the ability to just, out cardio and out tough her way to a win in this one.
Agreed.
Moving on, we have got Waldo Cortez Acosta. He's taking on Ryan Spann. Current price, Waldo minus 170. The comeback on Spann plus 145. I'm considering betting Waldo here. I haven't made a firm decision on it yet. But Ryan Spann obviously making his debut in the UFC at heavyweight in this fight. I feel like it's a kind of a weird move for him to make. Maybe he thinks his athleticism, will pay bigger dividends there. But is Ryan Spann putting on more weight going to be great for his cardio, taking on bigger hitters with the chin than he has? I'm kind of skeptical if that's the case. In the context of this fight, look, Spann's got some skills, right? He's a pretty good jiu-jitsu player. He's got a lot of power. He's very explosive while he's fresh. The biggest problem with Ryan Spann is just about every single fight of his career that has cleared around, he has started to melt in. Even the ones he's won,
I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned that. I literally, since the Alvey fight, it's been 10 fights.
Yeah, you can make the argument he lost to Sam Alvey.
And even in that, so if we're talking since the Alvey fight, it's been 5 years, 10 fights, he would be 0-10.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And the Alvey fight, he didn't deserve to win. Even the Smith fight, he got just about the worst version of Anthony Smith you could get. Fractured Anthony Smith's orbital early in the second round. Anthony Smith was literally just sitting there throwing lazy leg kicks and lazy jabs the last 7 minutes of the fight, and somehow was able to just outgrid a decision against him. I just look at Spann and it's okay, what is his biggest edge in this fight? And it's probably going to be the grappling. We've seen Waldo taken down before. We've seen him controlled before. He's not a very good grappler. But I don't know. Waldo Cortez Acosta, he fought when he was much greener than he is now. He fought Thomas Peterson on, the regional scene. And Peterson, I'd rate his, control game and his wrestling both considerably higher than Spann's. And he was able to stay safe in that fight and eventually come back and knock out Peterson in that fight. He fought Marcos de Lima, who I would say has, at least in terms of top pressure, is as good as Spann. And he was able to stay safe in that fight and almost come back in that fight as well. So I feel like
I would even say for De Lima's top pressure, I would even say it's better than Spann's. And on top of that, he's bigger than Spann. He's like a natural heavyweight.
Yeah. And so it's maybe Spann gets on top of him early, but every time we've seen Spann grapple for a full round, the guy has just melted. So it's man, maybe he gets on top of him early, but if he doesn't find the sub, he's probably fucked, if we're being honest. And then if he does just strike with him, Spann can knock him out. He hits hard enough to knock him out for sure. But Waldo's got a hell of a chin on him, man. The guy has taken some shots and never really even seemed phased. De Lima landed bombs on him and he just walked through them. Robellis landed a couple of huge bombs on them and he just took them. Now, everybody cracks eventually. So it wouldn't be shocking if maybe this is the time that Waldo, cracks. But I don't think he will. And honestly, there's a huge difference in toughness between these two. Waldo's a guy you can't stop leg kicks, and yet he gets his leg chopped every fight and just keeps coming at you, undeterred. Ryan Spann, he looks for the door the first time you see his adversity. In the cardio department, Waldo's got elite cardio for a heavyweight. Ryan Spann has got horrible cardio. So yeah, and durability, obviously Spann is very chinny, and Waldo's got a great chin. I just look at the fight and I feel almost all of Spann's equity is early in this fight, and I have a hard time putting Spann early finish that high. I really do. And you look, take a look at the guys that Ryan Spann has finished early, and it's I don't know. Ion Kutalaba, Dominic Reyes. I mean, Reyes is a good win, obviously, but like Reyes is pretty chinny himself. Misha Sarkunov. Those are like his last 3 finishes in the first round, and he's losing fights.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think he's losing fights to Krylov. I mean, Krylov's good. I'll give him credit for that. But like Guskov,
that's
that
what
was
I was just going to bring up.
Yeah,
that's what I was just going to say. It's like we brought up on the show. It's like, okay, Spann minus 155 over Guskov. It's like, well, that's probably fine. Like, you probably should handle business. Like that is a tier of fighter that Spann should clear.
I agree. I bet him. I read a post against Guskov at minus 170, and the first round went exactly how I thought it would. I'm like, he's not going to gas out. He just had like 4 minutes of back control. You can't be that tired. And sure enough,
yep,
done. But yeah, I feel like it's a pretty good fight for Waldo here. I think he should be nearer to the minus 200, minus 220 range in this fight. What do you think?
I'm in complete agreement with you. Honestly, the only reason why I'm not I wasn't laying the juice yet and seeing if the line maybe come in a little bit. It's just kind of, I do think he will face obviously that early adversity that we're talking about, but outside of that minimal adversity that he might face, I like Waldo a lot in this spot. Big striking edge, big cardio edge.
Moving on though, we got Su Young Yu taking on AJ Cunningham. I'm gonna be honest, guys. This is the one fight I haven't taped. I hope you did, Lags, because Yu is minus 700 and the comeback in Cunningham is plus 500. All I'll say is we have a matchup of an Asian road to UFC prospect, which are usually big time stayaways, taking on the worst fighter in the lower weight classes in the men's divisions in the UFC. Never AJ Cunningham. So I'll tape it at some point, but I can't imagine I'll find a play on it. What do you think, Lags?
Oh, don't get me wrong, John. You're probably not going to find a play on it. Maybe a total, depending on what is the over 1.5 minus 200. Yeah. See, I was probably leaning that way anyways myself. Like I don't think Yu's, all that good. Obviously, he's minus 700 here in this spot, but like mostly a wrestler. His stand-up's kind of a work in progress, pretty hittable. His cardio seems pretty questionable as well. Like it's AJ Cunningham, like you mentioned, probably one of the worst fighters in the division. It should be an easy spot for him, but going forward, it's like he's going to have a really, really hard time anytime he steps up into moderate competition, in my opinion.
Yeah, that would make sense. All right, well, we don't need to go any further with that fight. Nice little, hope everybody else has to take a nice piss break there. But we got Damon Blackshear taking on Cody Gibson. Blackshear massively chalked up here. He's minus 500. The comeback on Gibson, plus 385. Fun fight, but Blackshear should be fine. I like Cody as a fighter. He's old, but good process, good output, good cardio, proactive grappler. The problem for me when I look at this fight is I just struggle to see him really getting any parts of his game functional against Blackshear. Blackshear's the much better striker of the two. He's the much better athlete. He's the better grappler. He's obviously much, much younger than Gibson. I feel, maybe there's some equity that if Gibson can keep a pace high enough, he can get Blackshear to slow down and maybe take over on the back end. And I guess that would be his upside. But I just see that I thought that with the Miles Johns fight, you see the way Johns was kind of even tired and was able to easily rebuff him. And I just feel like this is kind of a different level of athlete. Like you give Cody Gibson guys like Chad Anheliger and he's going to run through them. Right. But you give him someone like a, Damon Blackshear, who's in their prime and a very, very good athlete with decent physicality. And I just think his upside is a split decision, whereas I think Blackshear could just dominate this fight. Yeah, Blackshear should be fine. I think he's better everywhere. I just don't have any interest in betting this. What do you think?
I think you could probably take a smoke break for the last fight and this fight combined and probably get a nice little and even on top of that too, even talking about the matchups, like why don't we switch and have Blackshear and you fight at 145? Blackshear moves up and then Cunningham.
Gibson and Cunningham?
Yeah, and they do a catch weight at like 140. Like that makes no sense. Those are much more competitive.
I don't really get why this is the fight Blackshear's getting, to be honest. Like he just beat Cody Stamann via finish, which is a pretty good win. And now he's getting Cody Gibson. It doesn't make terribly much sense to me.
Yeah, I was trying to look and see if anybody pulled out and it didn't look like it. But no, again, completely with you again here, John. Like in terms of a striker, much better striker here, Blackshear is. wrestler, grappler, even in the cardio department. It's like he would have to really, really exert himself to completely gas out to that point. So I think Blackshear should handle him with ease.
Yeah, agreed. Moving on, interesting fight here. We got Alexander, the Great Ape Hernandez. He's taking on Kurt Hollabaugh. Current price, Hernandez minus 180. The comeback on Hollabaugh plus 155. What are your thoughts, Lags?
I think Hernandez should be fine in this spot, personally. Like I early on in this spot, I think early on in this fight, I think it's gonna be rough for Hollabaugh. I mean, Hernandez much faster, much harder hitter of the two. And again, another point where I just don't think the pace is gonna be high enough to where Hernandez is gonna be wilting, gassing a little bit. Like I think it should be a good matchup for him. And depending on what the GTD comes out at, I know the over 2.5, I think like minus 180. I would have some interest in GTD around like that minus 160 range, I think, personally.
Yeah, I actually went into tape here almost certain I was going to bet Hollabaugh. I bet Hernandez in his last fight. But I honestly, after looking at it, I'm kind of with you. I feel like I don't really want to bet minus 180 on Alex Hernandez. But like on paper, Hollabaugh kind of profiles as the kind of fighter that could break Hernandez, with like pressure, output, all that kind of stuff. But I just look at it and, man, Hollabaugh, he's so plotty and, how he closes distance. Like, Trey Ogden did not have many issues keeping Hollabaugh off of him for most of that fight. He's plotty. He's very slow these days. And, to your point, Hernandez, big speed edge. Hernandez not going to sit in the pocket with him and take pictures and swing in the way someone like Kenan Krzyzewski did in his last fight. So, Hollabaugh actually pinning Hernandez down, I think, is going to be pretty tough. I mean, the small cage should be helpful. But I do think Hernandez should be able to pick his shots, pretty well here and avoid what's coming back at him, at least for the first couple rounds. And the other thing is, even if Hollabaugh is able to kind of corner him, I sort of think Hernandez might just be able to default to wrestling here. Hollabaugh's hips look gone to me, and his bottom game looks like, don't get me wrong, Alexander Hernandez he's not Trey Ogden, right? He's not going to dominate him on top. But I think Hernandez can probably get him down whenever he wants and probably control him with relative ease if he needs to. I just really struggle to see, unless Hernandez goes into full panic and melt mode, I really struggle to see Hollabaugh mounting enough sustained offense against him between, the power difference, and I do think there's a power difference, the speed difference, Hernandez's movement ability, and his wrestling upside. I just feel like Hernandez has, more tools everywhere to keep this fight in his desired range. Lags, you there? You frozen? Oh, Lags is frozen. All right. So yeah, I mean, I think Hernandez should win this fight. I feel the line is probably fine. I can't blame anybody for taking a Kurt stab. I just feel like Hollabaugh was pretty old, a few years ago. I bet him against Krzyzewski, and frankly, that was a good bet, I guess, but he didn't have an easy time with him. This is the kind of spot, you want to take Alexander Hernandez when he's taking steps down in competition, like this is, like his last couple fights. And Pepe said he feels that this is the Hernandez OAM rerun. I could 100% see it. He did default to the wrestling a bit against Billy Quarantillo, and the problem is Billy just doesn't get tired ever. Whereas, Kurt's pretty easy to get flat on bottom. So yeah, I think Alex is going to win. I don't really have any interest in Hollabaugh. Moving on, we got Kevin Vallejos. He's taking on Sungwoo Choi. Current price, Vallejos minus 600. The comeback on Choi, plus 450. I almost honestly clicked Vallejos minus 350 on Friday. I am obviously now, after the price move, kicking myself a bit. I don't think skill for skill, the price is right. Like, Choi's probably got as many skills as Vallejos has. But, I mean, the difference in hardware between these two is just fucking crazy. Or I should say the difference in durability. Choi just can't take a shot anymore at all. It's just, we're at that point now where it's happening. He's gotten dropped or finished enough times that how can you trust him against even a moderate puncher? And Vallejos actually looks pretty.
I told you that against Steve Garcia.
Yeah.
I think he had a shot. I
took him against
there,
Garcia.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Vallejos, I think, is a pretty good talent. Good boxer, decent anti-grappler, a lot of power, a lot of speed. I do think the market's probably overrating him a bit. I feel like him winning around off Gene Silva is probably influencing what this price is. But, I'd much rather wait around to bet Choi than bet him pre here. I think Vallejos does slow down a bit, but I think early on, Choi is going to be under a full-blown assault from Vallejos, and I don't really I'd much rather see Vallejos start to slow down and get on like Choi like plus 200 or plus 250 than take the plus 450 and watch him get like dropped 3 times in the first round and route to getting finished. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be shocked if Choi rocks up and pulls off an upset here, you know? I just feel like there's so much more KO equity on the Vallejo side than there is on the Choi side in this fight. And Vallejo seems like he's on the way up. Choi seems like his MMA career is over, to be honest with you. So I don't know. I'm probably being too dramatic about it. Like there's probably a bit of value on Choi. I think there's probably a bit of value on Choi, but I don't have like any interest in playing it, you know? Especially because like the Steve fight, I'm like, he's been knocked out 2 fights in a row. He knows he's a better fighter. He just needs to come out here, kick calves, mix in the occasional wrestling, avoid heavy pocket exchanges. And the first time he even gets a little shook, he bites down on the mouthpiece and just starts banging in the pocket with him.
His
instincts. Yeah, his instincts are horrible. His response to getting like wobbled is not to like clinch up or anything. It's to just swing back harder, you know? And that's not what I want against a guy like Vallejos. I have no interest in betting this fight pre. Maybe some Choi live if he's got the right game plan. But I think Vallejos is going to knock him out. What do you think, Lex?
Agree again. I think Vallejos does probably knock him out, but I would be looking for an under 2.5 when that comes out. Right now, the total is a 1.5 minus 155. But yeah, no, to your points, Vallejos huge durability edge here. So I do think he does find that KO. And I think he's got a huge power edge here, honestly, too. I mean, Choi hits hard. Choi hits hard, but I think Vallejos hits much harder.
I will say, I don't want to understate this because obviously everybody saw him dominate on Contenders. The guy Vallejos fought on Contenders is an absolute scrub. Like horrible, you know. I remember taping that fight, and that dude is just not. That guy's never going to fight in the UFC. So I don't think you should put too much stock into that. But he showed some real skills against Silva, and he showed real durability against Silva, obviously in that fight. So
yeah. Hey, so some breaking news, John. Non-UFC related. Devontae Adams to the Rams. 2-year deal, and Josh Allen also signed to a 6-year, $330 million contract.
That feels cheap, honestly. But anyway, moving on. We got the co-main event.
Yes.
Zaleski dos Santos. He's minus 175. He's taking on Chidi and Joe Kiwani. I am kind of tempted on the Zaleski side, to be honest. I don't know if I'll get there or not because Zaleski is old, but they're both pretty old, honestly. Chidi's like 36 as well. But I do think the market is probably a bit higher on Chidi right now than it should be. You know, I bet Chidi in his last 2 fights against Jared Gooden and Reese McKee, but that's because Jared Gooden and Reese McKee are just not UFC caliber fighters, like not even close to it, you know?
Right.
And he's taking a pretty huge step up in competition here, you know, with Zaleski. And I know Zaleski is like near the end, but he's a pretty clever fighter. You know, he was outgunned on the feet against Randy Brown in his last fight, and he almost won that fight just by defaulting to grappling when he realized it, you know, and he did outgrapple Brown in that fight. And like I look at this fight, and you know, Chidi, he's got a decent reach advantage here. I think he's got a small height advantage. So I mean, he could have some striking success on the feet for moments, but I don't see any reason he's going to really have Zaleski like hugely outgunned on the feet. And I do think if Zaleski goes to the grappling here, and gets him down, he is going to maul Chidi on the mat. You know, I know Chidi's grappling looked okay against Jared Gooden in his last fight, but Jared Gooden just not a great grappler, and he kept trying to force the grappling, and Chidi just did a good job kind of, you know, using his own aggression against him. If Zaleski gets on top of Chidi, I think he'll probably submit him. If he's consistently getting on top,
or he'll just wear him out because his cardio is trash too.
Yeah, my biggest concern with the fight is just like Zaleski is old. They both are, but you know, as a favorite price, that's kind of a concerning dynamic. But I just feel, I mean, Chidi lost a striking match to Albert Duraev, man, a decision to Albert Duraev striking. And every time this guy's faced adversity in the UFC, and even before the UFC, he just tends to check out. You know, Chidi's like a great hammer. If he can do his game, like Reese McKee and Jared Gooden just went into the clinch with him. And he was like, okay, thank you. I'm just going to tie clinch you and knee you for the entire fight. You know, if he isn't allowed to do his game, though, he tends to melt. And I mean, this is probably the most generous fight that Zaleski's had in like
Other than his
quite
last
some
fight.
time. Yeah. Oh, I forgot about the Scroggin fight, to be
I was
honest. Like
gonna
that is.
I was gonna correct you about it when you said a last fight, and I was like, no, Randy Brown was 2 fights ago, but that's all right.
But I mean, you look at the guys he's been fighting, right? You make an argument. He
Oh, I
beat
know.
Renat. You know, he beat Abubakar. You know, he beat the shit out of Benoit Saint-Denis. Like he has been fighting a really, really high level of competition for quite a bit of time. And Cheaty's been getting fed the dregs and is now fighting him. I don't know. I feel like Zaleski's the better fighter here. I'm debating whether or not I want to bet it. I'm hoping Cheaty money comes in. I'd be in on Zaleski at minus 150. But I do think he's the much better fighter here. What do you think, Legs?
No, I'm all on board as well. I think the only other point of contention I would add to, as well as the age, would be. I mean, I think there's a lot of early horsepower here from the Cheaty side coming back. So, not that Zaleski's durability has shown any signs of weakness, but again,
I mean, Randy hurt him. Glenbot saying does the volume from last fight change dynamic? I don't think Cheaty's last 2 fights matter really all that much in the context of this one. Like those guys are like McKee and Gooden are like the bottom of the barrel. That's just him. He should beat them up, and he did. Like Zaleski.
I was going to say, with all due respect, those are guys that they can get easy volume off of. Like,
yeah, exactly.
If Zaleski went 15 minutes with Jared Gooden, he probably could get 80, 90 strikes.
Yes,
with all due respect.
Moving on, though, we got the rematch. Marvin Vettori, home in Dolidze. Current price, Vettori minus 140. The comeback on Dolidze plus 120. What do you think, Lags? You think Roman gets it done this time?
No, I actually think Marvin probably does get it done here in a 5-round setting. Minus 140, minus 150 range to me seems fine on the Vettori side, because to me, if Roman isn't having those big moments early and just again landing a lot of big damage, I think the latter rounds of this fight, I think Marvin's really going to win at a decent clip, rounds 4, rounds 5. So I understand the steam coming in on Marvin, and I would honestly maybe look at even, hear me out. I know there's going to be a lot of strikes thrown, but I would even look at maybe a GTD as like a parlay piece. I think around that minus 200 range, I think is fine.
Yeah, I bet 3 units on Marvin at minus 119. It's funny. I had seen like a week ago, someone said something that he had been talking about retirement. And I guess he posted an Instagram like 6 months ago that was like, oh, does anybody want to fight someone washed in the top 10 on their way out the door? But it was something like that. But I think he doesn't speak very good English, and I'm pretty sure it was extremely tongue-in-cheek, because after that, he's posted a ton of stuff about how bad he can't wait to get back. He just went to ATT. He just did his first full camp at ATT. Not really the kind of move someone would make to go pay the ATT coaches if you were on your way out the door.
No.
He's only 31 years old, and I think he had a good amount of time off after the Cannonier fight. I think he needed the time off, to be honest, after all the damage he took in that fight. But I rewatched their first fight, and I felt like, first of all, Roman's success was like massively overstated. Like most of the shots he was landing, Marvin had his hand up for. Now, the optics of those shots were probably why a lot of people thought it was close, but he didn't land much flush. Like Marvin easily outboxed him for most of that fight. He easily outkicked him for pretty much the entire fight. Roman tried to grapple a little bit late, but didn't have much success with it. And you saw at like the 6-7 minute mark in that fight, Roman's output fell off a cliff. He had a decent third round, just landing a couple power shots, but he really was slowing down hard. And I rewatched that fight. I'm like, yeah, I laid minus 200 on Vettori there in a 3-round fight. Maybe that was a tad wide. But with 2 more rounds to go, I think Vettori would have cooked him bad over 2 more rounds in that fight. I think 5 rounds favors him enormously. I would still favor Marvin in a 3-round fight. I'd probably make him about this price in a 3-round fight. When you add in the extra 2 rounds, I think he's got to be up in the minus 180 to minus 200 range. It's just he lands more strikes than his opponents. He's fought a much better level of competition. Dolidze is not a good striker. He's got very bad cardio. I can't really see Dolidze having much wrestling success against Marvin. If anything, if Dolidze tries to push the grappling, he's probably going to gas himself out, and Marvin's going to put it on him worse. Yeah, I look at it and I just feel like Marvin's definitely going to outland him. One of these guys, Marvin won a 25-minute kickboxing match with Paulo Costa, where he landed almost 200 significant strikes.
Yeah.
He won a 25-minute fight with Jack Hermanson. I know their first fight was pretty competitive, him and Dolidze, But I also think that's basically the best version of Dolidze we've seen in the octagon. And we also saw Roman Dolidze look pretty bad against a totally washed Anthony Smith 2 fights ago. He looked pretty bad against Kevin Holland until Holland, hurt himself. He looked out of sorts on the feet in that fight. And he's 36 years old. He just had another kid. He's almost 37. Marvin's 31. He should be in his prime. He's an ATT. He's got way better cardio, way more output. I think he should be able to counter grapple Dolidze fine. Yeah, I mean, if this goes 25, Marvin's going to outland him by many, many strikes. And I would expect he owns the last 2 rounds. Whereas I think the first 2 would be competitive, but I'd still kind of lean Marvin. So yeah, I like Marvin here. I think he's just a better fighter pretty much everywhere. I think Marvin up to like minus 160 is decent for a bet, in my opinion. So I like that side. I like him to get it done again and hopefully get back on track. Division's more fun when meathead Marvin Vettori is in there, doing crazy shit. But this card sucks, man. Like this is a tough one.
It's awful.
Oh, it's a daytime card too, huh?
Is it really?
Yeah, 1 p.m. Eastern. When I'm seeing
I knew next weekend's was. I didn't realize.
Well, that makes a lot more sense.
No, this weekend's is 4.
Is it?
Yeah, it's 4. Yeah, 4 o'clock prelims, main card 7 o'clock. Yeah, that's next week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, next weekend.
I was looking at Tapology. Hold on, let me pull it up right now.
I'm looking on ESPN at least.
While I am here, couple things. I'll talk to you about one of them privately. But I did put out a tweet last week that I have a new show from Club and Sub that is coming this Thursday. It's called Combat and Cocktails. It's not going to be weekly. I think we're probably going to do it once or twice a month. But Sean Orr and I are going to make a couple cocktails on live TV. Chat. It's going to be a little bit less betting oriented. There will be some betting talk, but we're going to review last card, talk about like the next month, what's in store. Maybe a little bit of a variety hour in it, maybe some pop culture, see what the chat's doing. We'll have people on as we go. And then I think in the next month, you and I will talk off screen about this. But since Lags and I do this show on Sundays now where there's no props out, I think we need to launch a prop show at some point, just a shorter 20 to 30 minutes.
Where's what we can do? Since you were just talking about doing since that show, the Combat and Cocktail show is only going to be maybe once a month.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could do that on Thursdays. Could do Thursday nights as our prop show.
Yeah, so the Combat and Cocktail, we can do that. We could do it before. So the Combat and Cocktail is going to be 10 p.m. on Thursday. We could do it at like 9. It is pretty good. That's Pepe bringing the heat as usual. But yeah, first episode is going to be this Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern. So that'll be
But yeah, we could do it Thursday at like 8 or 9. Or like you said, 9. It would be better to do it at 9 since transition right in. But
yeah, I completely agree. So yeah, guys, that'll be out this Thursday. Next week we'll be breaking down a really fun card. It's the UFC London card. Leon Edwards taking on Sean Brady. A lot of good fights on that card, so I'm excited to chat about that. But yeah, guys, thanks for coming out this week. I wish we had more to chat about. This card just is complete AIDS. There's not really. It really is. I honestly, I'm like sitting here and I almost want to just close up shop for the week and just be like, I have 2 bets. Like, that's it. I don't need to do anything.
That's not going to happen.
That's not how I operate, unfortunately. But
I know.
I don't know if I'll bet any other money lines unless Staleski comes in. I don't really like anything else.
I was going to say, don't even bother taping the Cunningham fight. Not even worth your time. Yeah.
No. I'm gonna pass that. But like I can't. I mean, it's all huge. There's nothing worse. I don't mind shitty fight night cards when we get a lot of 2-way fights at reasonable lines. When we get like a bunch of bums and they're all like minus 500s, it's like I don't even want to watch this. Like we're going to my friend's son's like first birthday party this weekend.
Yeah.
And when I saw this slate, I was just like, all right. I mean, if I don't see any of this card, I won't be that upset about it. So
right.
But yeah, guys, thanks for coming out tonight. As always, drop a like, subscribe, use the promo code CLUB at fightnumbers.com for 30% off your first month's deposit. And we'll see you next weekend. Good luck. God bless. Peace.